Hello, good people. It's another amazing day. And before I continue, please make sure you subscribe on our YouTube channel. This is Real Talk Show. And today I'm your host, Henry Karanja. Najua najiuliza leo nani kwani ametuletea Real Talk Show. Mimi niko hapa and mtakuwa ukiniona mara mingi hapa kwa hii show, and may God bless you. Thank you so much for always coming back here to watch our videos. Make sure you leave your comment down below there. Juu comment zenu huwa zinatupatia morale ya continue with what we are doing. So I'm happy to be with you here. Today I have an amazing guest with me here in our studios. Na ni mtu ametoka mbali sana, ni Mungu amemtoa mbali sana. Sijui kama ushaona mtu haja ingia high school na ile kizungu anaongea, hata mimi mwenyewe nimeshangaa. So just sit back there, relax, make sure you learn something from this show. You know, I know you're gonna be mentored, you're gonna be inspired by his story. He's just an amazing person. So without much further ado, allow me to let him introduce himself. Thank you so much for coming here in our show. May God bless you so much. We are happy to have you and feel welcome and feel at home. So introduce yourself to us. Tell us who you are.
Thank you, Brother Henry.
Yes,
I really appreciate, and I'm honored to have this invitation.
wow,
Thank you so much for letting me in this place.
you are welcome.
My name is Charles Mathenge, and I'm born again. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a businessman, I'm an author, and a servant in the kingdom of God.
Wow.
Just but some of many things that we do in this world. Yes.
Thank you so much for honoring our invitation to come here. I know your story is gonna be inspire someone out there. A lot of people will learn from your story, because I know God is a miraculous God. He works in a miracle ways to bless his people. I know you have come from far, and that's why we are here, so that you can share with us your journey, where you have come from. So tell us, Charles amezaliwa wapi na ametoka wapi?
Oh, thank you. Charles Mathenge was born and raised up in Laikipia district. That is in the former Left Valley County, Left Valley province. I was brought up from a very humble hamlet where our main economic activity was pastoralism and a little bit of farming. We didn't know what poverty was, not because we had everything, but because all the village was tarred in the same brush. That's to say, we were all in the same level, almost like everyone. So when everyone is in the same level, you cannot say this has this or this has this one does not have this. So that's how we grew up, and that's where I started my school in early days, nursery school. And between me and my humble beginning was this great inspiration, derived from a name that my parents used to fondly refer me to. To them, it never made any big meaning, because to them it was just that a name. But to me, it became a great inspiration. It became a detonator that triggered the explosion of the great potential within me. It became a stepping stone or a foundation that opened my eyes to see myself in a different way. So I'd like to encourage parents, whenever we call our kids names, or we refer our kid some names to our kids, to us it might be just but a name or something to enjoy with them. But sometimes these small things that we take for granted, they are very impactful. And sometimes they determine destinies. Because the name that they used to call me Monelewa Embu. Yes. That is the interpretation in Kikuyu. This Monelewa Embu, they referred to one of my father's brothers, who was by then a senior government officer, and he happened to be in charge of Embu province. So anytime they would call me, they would refer as Munene wa Embu. And the more I continue hearing this name, it developed inside of me. You know, the word of God says that faith comes by hearing, and hearing and hearing.
Yes.
So every time they would call me this name, it would start developing an attitude or a sense of greatness. It is not that there was anything that looked great around me, but by what I was hearing every day, it developed this sense of greatness within me. And I would feel, yes, I am great. I felt, I believed, and I saw myself great, despite the fact that there was nothing great around me. But the power within this address changed my perception. Remember, this is during my early stages. I think I was around 5 years, 4 years, 6 years, 7 years.
Young.
So I was still young. But this name created that image within me, an image of greatness.
You could see that greatness.
Yeah, so whenever they called me that name, I felt good. I remember yesterday I happened to have passed by my parents back at home. Now they are elderly. And immediately I knocked the door. Oh, my dad saw me come in and he said, "Oh, Munene." So it still reminded me of those early days. So I went to school. I started my school consciously and subconsciously feeling or with this attitude that I was great, even though around me there was nothing great, but I felt I was great. So even when I could go back home, this address was good. So it was my determination, and it was my desire that I will excel in my class, in my academics, so that one day when I grow up, I will truly become this great man. So my inspiration, my vision, my everything was driven that because, one day I will become great. And I knew the only way or the only route to greatness by that time was to go to school,
Yes.
perform well, pass your examinations, go to high school, go to university, and that was the route to greatness as far as I was concerned. So, and sure enough, I was not done. During my school period from class 1 to class 8, I think I used to pray between number 1 and number 3 there. So this thing really inspired me, and that is how my journey started, though from a humble background. Yes.
Before we continue with your story, could you tell us how many are in your family? Ulikuwa wangapi?
Okay, we were born 5 brothers, and I'm third born. Yes.
Wow. And that born and you are blessed.
Amen. Yes, I am.
So, tell us, umefika class 8 sasa.
Yes.
What will happen from there?
Okay. After sitting my KCPE examination, I was very optimistic that that was just a crossing bridge to high school, where I would study, go to university. And I had this vision because this brother to my dad, I would see some photos with he had taken with Wazungus in America, where he had went for further studies before coming to become a government official in Kenya. So whenever I saw these photos, they really inspired me. And I say that I would go to high school, go to university, and further my education to America, and then come back and be great man. And still, I was being constantly reminded by this word, Munene wa Embu, every time they called me. So it would remind me, you have a journey.
Called after him.
I was called after him. So every time they would call me, they would remind me I had a journey. I had a journey to greatness. And I had no choice but to be great. So after sitting my KCPE examination, it later dawned to my mind that I would not make it to high school. Not because I didn't perform, but because the truth of the matter was that my dad would not afford to pay for my high school education. This was not easy to me, with all these ambitions, desires, and expectations. And I had already seen my greatness. And I knew the only highway to greatness is through education. So it was not an easy time when I realized that I would not make it to high school. I think by then I was around 15 years. So I was a very discouraged man and a very bitter young man. I felt very frustrated and heartbroken. And during this time, I didn't know where to direct my frustration or my anger to. But I found a soft landing to my frustration. I directed them to the God of my father. Because my father was a pastor.
Your dad?
Yes, my dad was a pastor. And he had taught me about this God. A God who provides. A God who is able to supply everything we need beyond what we can expect. And I knew my dad really valued education, so there was no way he could have frustrated my goals. So I was very, very angry with this God of my father. Why is this God so mean to an extent that he cannot give my dad school fees to pay for my high school education? I was very frustrated with this God. The Bible says when I was a kid, I talked like a kid, I thought like a kid, and I did like a kid. So at that time, my frustration and my anger was against God. I hated myself. You will not see me with the groups, my age mates who had been left, who had never made it to school. I used to stay alone in the Bible. I studied the Bible and I read it. And I would like to tell you, Brother Henry, God talks. And God talks very clearly. Because at one point in time, as I was still in this confusion and frustration and research, trying to read the Bible and understand this God, I heard a voice. And this voice was very clear. I had never heard such a voice again. Because the voice resonated in all my body parts.
And you are still a teenager?
Around 16, 15, they're 16. I didn't hear it with my ears, but I heard it with every part of my body. And this voice was very clear. And it told me, yes, you have not followed your studies as you had wished, but I have chosen you. And whatever educated people do, that you will do. Wherever educated people go, you will go. I didn't understand, but I got the message that despite the fact that I had not made it to high school, God had chosen me.
For sure, he has done it.
And whatever educated people do, he promised me at the age of 15, there's 16 years, I will do. Wherever educated people go, I will go. That was it. So after hearing this, I immediately swung into action. And I decided, now I was somehow excited. The frustrations went a little bit down. And I was somehow excited, and I looked, still, God is with me.
Yeah, God is with you.
Because I knew failing to go to high school was tantamount to my end. But now here comes a grain of light that despite the fact that I have not gone to high school, God will make me live like educated people live. He will make me do things educated people do. So it gave me some hope. And I had come across a leaflet from a certain Bible college in the United States. I told you my father was a pastor. So at one point of time, I had come across a leaflet in his books from a Bible college in the United States. So when I heard this voice, I immediately swung into action. I took the leaflet and I sent an application letter to this Bible college in the United States. And after some time, around 3-4 months, I received a letter back.
Okay, this letter, you found it on Facebook, or where did you get the letter?
During those days, I think Facebook and mobile phones were. We are talking of 1997 there, 96, so Facebook was not very, very common.
And where did you
and
get
bearing in mind, I was in remote areas of Laikipia. So something like Facebook, those are stories.
You are not valid.
even mobile phones. So I got a leaflet from. It was some. I don't know where he had gotten those. Whatever he used
from a friend or your father?
No, from my dad. He's not the one who gave me. I got it from his books. And since he was a pastor and he used maybe to go to pastors' conferences in Nairobi and all over, he could have gotten it there. So when I got this leaflet, which was about this Bible college, I was inspired to write an application and ask them to let me or to
let you into the Bible college.
I expressed my desire to join them. And sure enough, after around 3 or 4 months, I received a letter back. They sent a letter. Henry, you can imagine how I felt.
Can imagine. You're so happy.
When I received a letter from the United States of America, back in my small hamlet there in Laikipia.
In the village.
This was the most treasured document I ever received. I was very much excited. I was happy. And I felt, in fact, it took some time before opening that letter. Because I felt, yes, the God I was searching, this is the God. I've sent a letter to this Baptist Bible College in Missouri, United States. And they have responded. They have sent me an invitation. So after coming down, I went and I opened the letter. And sure enough, there was an invitation.
Wow.
There was an invitation to the Bible College. This was good. But apart from an invitation, there was a form that I needed to fill and send them back. It was more of a registration form. So I took the form and I went through to read and to know so that I can fill the form and send it back to the college. This was what broke everything apart. Because when I took that form and I read through, I think if I had any qualification, I think I had only one, that I was born again.
Yes. Yeah.
But all the other qualifications were nowhere.
Yeah.
Because they needed somebody with a high school education. They needed somebody over 18 years. I was not. By then, even I didn't have an ID card. They needed somebody with a passport. So the demands were so out of my reach. This again
broke your heart.
Devastated my heart. It rekindled the pain and the discouragement that I had when I failed to go to high school. And remember now, this is almost 2 years down the line.
You're just at home doing nothing.
Yes, I'm at home. Let me tell you, my dad had tried to intervene and help me. I remember there was this time he approached a carpenter.
So his was the reaction about the letter, was it good?
What?
Did you tell your dad about the letter?
About the letter, no. I didn't tell him at that time. I think I'm a person who somehow keeps
your things to yourself.
Yes. My victories, my battles, and I think that's my nature. So even if he came to know after an holiday.
It already backfired to me.
Yeah, I was to tell him if now it was for him to escort me to Nairobi to the airport. That is the time I would have told him that I've conquered. Yes, I failed to go to high school, but here there is another opportunity. So that is when I would have told him. But when it came with some negative side of fate, I didn't share with him. So I was telling you there before, my dad had reached one of his friend who was a carpenter, and they made arrangements for me to go with that gentleman so that he could teach me carpentry and all those things. And when my dad came back and asked me and told me about the plan, I said no. In fact, I'm sorry, that is one of the reasons I hated carpentry with a passion. The time he came and told me about the arrangement with the carpenter, and what was in my mind was something very different
from what you want.
I really hated carpentry. That's a fact.
But you love chairs.
I love chairs, but I don't like anything to do with carpentry. He also, when I refused, the fact that I was against all his moves, to him he was trying to help me or to give me a foundation. But within me, I felt there was something greater than this. And I saw what I wanted to do, and I saw the path that I wanted to take, but it had these blocks, high school blocks and all those things. So he approached a mechanic still, and they made arrangements. He came back and told me, now since you don't want carpentry, and so is willing to take you in and train you in mechanics and all those things. I told him no. By this time now, I'm already discouraged because the letter that I was expecting it would be a turnaround. It has really backfired and reminded me I failed, because as long as I don't have an high school certificate,
you cannot go there.
Whatever I think I can be able to achieve in my life, I will not. So it was not still an easy moment. This is now I'm struggling to see how I will shape my life or the direction that my life will take. And at this time when I'm very much frustrated, the accuser of the brethren who whispers to me, and he tells me, you see, you know where you belong. You belong to the class of herders. You better look for someone who will employ you to look after his cattle and goats. In fact, you have all the qualifications. But what you're trying or what you're thinking is far above you. I felt no. There is something, I don't know what is this, but there is something greater inside of me, more than following after the cattle in Laikipia in the bushes. There is something more than going and becoming a farm laborer. There is something. I didn't know what it was, but I realized there was something. So after turning down my father's offer, he didn't have much to do, so I just remained at home. I ended up looking for other ways or other means of making some little income. And the only way I could make some income is to go for, we used to call it mafuti.
Kwa shamba.
You know that? Yeah, good, very good. Where you would go and someone would kanyanga refu mpaka huko
akupatie pati yako.
Then once he gives you a part, you do it and he pay you. Or alternatively, you would work from morning to evening, then you would be paid.
How much money did you earn from that ifuti?
It was good money indeed. 60 bob per day.
By then it was a lot of money.
I can say, though I had to walk for around 10 kilometers to the place where I had to get the ifuti and then come back, around 20 kilometers. I had to walk for 20 kilometers. So I had to wake up very early in the morning and go be there by 8, do the daily ifuti up to maybe around 4. Then from there, start my journey back home.
Tutafika sasa usiku.
That was not an issue. The fact was that I had made some money. I was some money enough to make some money back home. And this continued for quite some time, up to a point that I decided now, I think I would like to go to town.
Now, which town?
I'd like to move from now my village to the nearest town. We had 2 towns in between. We were in between two towns. There was Nanyuki, the closest, and Nyahururu. So I made a decision to move to Nyahururu. At least I had gathered some few cash, and my dad was able to top up something little. And he also made arrangement for me to get a kiosk in Nyahururu at the bus terminus. So I went there as an investor with 3,000 shillings, and they were enough to pay for the rent, for the kiosk rent, and also pay for some few commodities which I would sell to travelers at the stage at Nyahururu bus terminus. So I started operating this kiosk, and you can tell with the stock that I had, the kiosk didn't go far. So after some times,
what happened to the kiosk?
What I was selling and the bills that needed to be settled, they never matched because I didn't have enough stock. So I would sell just some little commodities here and there, bearing in mind it was not the only kiosk, and always people look for a well-stocked kiosk when someone wants to buy something. So you can imagine maybe I would just get some leftovers here and there at the end of the day. So after some few months, the kiosk had to collapse, and I remained with 2 options, either to go back home or fight it on. The latter won, so I had to fight it on in Nyahururu town. And for me to survive now, I had to change the game, and I started hawking ripe bananas. So at least with a capital of 100 shillings or 150, I would go to the market, buy bananas, pack them in polythene papers, hawk them around the bus terminus, and on a good day, maybe I would make a sale and make a profit of 100 or 200, and that appeared to be much better even compared to the kiosk. Bearing in mind I didn't have anything to pay. You know, in the kiosk I had to do some payments at the end month to pay for the rent. Now here I'm just walking around and making some coins, some money. So it was good, though at the same time it still had its challenges. Now this time I would maybe wake up on a bad day, spend all the day moving around, maybe do just some few sales. At the end of the day, those bananas are already overripe and because of the sun, they are already black. So I had to make a choice: either throw them away or make them supper. Making them supper was much easier than throwing them away, because at the end of the day I had bought them. So I would sit down and eat as much as I could. At least they would save me money to go and buy supper. And this continued. During this time, I'm still, my father had connected me to a fellow past friend of him in Nyahururu, and this man was really following up on me. So he would put me to go to church, and he would bring me closer to him. But I'm doing this a very discouraged young man, because I believed this was not my destiny. This was not what I saw. I saw something different, but the life that I'm living or what I'm doing is very different from what I saw. So this pastor introduced me to a friend, one of his friends who was training how to play keyboards, piano and those music instruments.
You are a keyboardist.
I'll tell you the story.
I'm a keyboardist that I have asked.
Hey, this man, I went to the class. I would do it maybe after hawking in the evening. He used to offer evening classes. So in the evening, after doing my hawking all around, I would go and do my classes. Until one time, there was no one to play the keyboard in the church. And the pastor asked me that Sunday whether he told me, you're the one to play the keyboard. I respected him. He was a friend to my father, and still he's the one who had connected me to the trainer. So I sat at the keyboard and I did what I did. I was not very smart, but at least I did something. But that was the last day I went back to that school. I think even church at the same time. The reason being, I hated serving this God. I hated serving this God.
Because he's not answering your prayers.
I felt this is a disappointing God. How can he just leave me like that? Where is the God who told me that I will live like the educated people live? Because when he told me that, I believed it was supposed to be an instant thing. But now I'm here hustling, suffering, and doing all those things. So when the pastor seemed to try kind of draw me into the service, that was the last day he saw me in church. And that's the last day I went to the piano class. I remained in Nyahururu, doing whatever I was doing, a very bitter and frustrated man. Yes. So this continued.
Pastor, hata kuuliza kwa nini umeacha kuja kanisa?
He's busy. He would ask me, and I would give excuses. And since he's not asking every day, By the time he's asking after 2 months, I still have another excuse.
Yes.
I still have another excuse. So I started disconnecting gradually. Not because I had purpose, but I had felt that I didn't want it to continue.
Now, during this time, you have stopped going to church. What were you thinking? What was it your mind telling you to do next?
Okay. During this time, I concentrated my energy and my focus into joining our discipline forces. And sure enough, I made quite some attempts during the recruitment. Whenever there was a recruitment, I would go. And this one thing still came again, because they would put me away simply because I didn't have credentials. I went to I tried the first recruitment, and they told me it's impossible because they have their criteria of taking in officers. I tried another one, and still they said so. I think it was a different discipline. I tried this discipline, I tried this other discipline, and I came to realize they were talking the same language. The fact that I didn't have the O-level certificate still comes again and becomes an obstacle. I have set aside God's thing, and I've decided now I will concentrate in security, being an officer. So after I was frustrated several times, I decided to take it a notch higher, because I believed, despite the fact they say that I didn't have the credential, I believed inside of me I had everything that it took to be an officer. So to them, they judged me based on the credentials, but to me, I believed I had everything that it took for me to be an officer. So when I saw these frustrations were not coming to an end, I wrote a letter to the then Minister of Internal Security. By then he was Major Marsden Madoka. He was the Minister of Internal Security. I did a copy to General Service Commandant. By then he was somebody, Samson Chelabos. He was the commandant. So I did a letter and I explained to them why I believe that despite my shortfall in credential, why I believed I was good and I was capable of serving as an officer in the discipline forces. Whether this succeeded or not, I believe I gave it a best shot. I'm going back to where I told you, my foundation and the words that were used when I was growing up, that I was a great man. This made me believe that everything is possible. Even if you judge me based on my credentials, I believed it was possible. And that is why I had the courage to push it to the highest office of the Internal Security Minister. But things went how they went, and now I'm here. What I would like to say or to tell my viewers is that the Word of God is true, and never judge your destiny based on the location of your birth. Never judge your future based on your credential or what your certificate says. If you can see it, you can get it. And when God speaks, when God promises, He has got all the machinery to make sure that what He promises will come to pass. All my frustrations were because I tried to help God. God had His own way to make sure that what He said about my life will come to pass. But my frustration were not from God. My frustration was self-induced, because God chooses the weak to shame the strong. Sometimes you don't have to be strong for you to get that which you are focusing on, that which you are believing. Sometimes you don't need to have qualifications. God picks the least, and from the least he makes them great. So the foundation or the main cause of my frustration was not the fact that I didn't make it to O level. My frustration was that I tried to help God. And you can remember, there was this gentleman when David was bringing back the Ark of the Covenant. When he tried to help God, you know what happened? Don't try to help God in his promises. If he promised, he will deliver. Today I'm standing here, despite, that is what I've given is just but a small part of my journey that I have walked towards becoming what I am. I have not yet achieved. I have not yet realized, but I am the clay in the potter's hand. But what I can say today is that I am not the one I was that time. I have made some steps and advancement towards becoming, towards the fulfillment of the Word of God. Life sometimes will put you in darkness as you walk towards the purposes of God. Sometimes you will find yourself buried. I remember there was this time I was pressed. I passed through a very trying period of time, and I felt I was dead. I felt I was buried. But the voice of God spoke to me in a clear way, and it told me, son, you are not buried, but you are planted. Do you know what? It is very easy to confuse between being buried and being planted, because these are same process. When you are being buried, you are dusted. Sometimes maybe I'm speaking to someone who at this time, your name has been soiled. You cannot even walk in your village. You cannot walk into your workplace. Not because you are guilty, but your name has been soiled. Your name has been dirtied. Sometimes maybe I'm speaking to someone who at this time, he or she is feeling secluded, is isolated by everyone. He feels as if his life has come to an end, as if there is no future. I was at this point when God told me, son, you are not buried, but you are planted. The soil, the dirt that they have smeared on you, it is a catalyst for your germination. The darkness that you're going through, it is a catalyst for the process of your making to become what you are. And today I can attest that God is working in my life, and I am seeing the fulfillment of the Word of God in my life. I am a class 8 dropout. I believe I'm talking to university graduates. I'm talking to people who have advanced in their study more than myself. But today I can attest the word that God spoke to me when I was 15 years, when I was desperate, when I was discouraged, when I felt as if my word has come to an end. And he told me, young man, you are crying today because you didn't go to high school, but I have chosen you. My choosing you is not based on the level of your education, but I have chosen you. And the word of God was, whatever educated people do, you will do. Wherever educated people go, you will go. Today I'm seeing the manifestation of this word around over 20 years back. Today I have a book that I've written, the best-selling book, The Ultimate Reward of a Servant. I believe we will have time to talk about this later. But today, this is the manifestation that despite my background, despite my limitations, I didn't stay where I was parked. I had a bigger picture, a bigger image of who I am, and I was able to do what I'm doing today. I celebrate the goodness of God when I see this book.
Oh, yes.
It has been a good best-selling book. It has been a very inspiring book. And this book I wrote myself. Nobody helped me to write not even a single sentence.
Is it based on your story?
The book based on my story is in the cooking.
Okay.
It is coming. But it is still have a little bit of my story. But there is another one that is coming, which has got more details about my story. This book has the foundations, principle of greatness through servanthood. Because when Jesus realized that every one of us has a seed of greatness within him, he gave us a formula that whoever is able to apply this formula will succeed. It doesn't matter how educated you are. If you are able to apply the formula of greatness through servanthood, you will be great. It doesn't matter your background. It doesn't matter whether you are poor, whether you are rich, whether you are black, whether you are white, whether you are a woman, whether you are a man. This is a principle. And once you apply the principle of greatness through servanthood, it unlocks your greatness. So this book is much on unlocking your greatness through service, because all of us, we are servants.
Sure.
Service is not about church. This book goes beyond the confines of church walls to government institutions, to corporate institutions, because I believe the problem that we are facing in our current government is not lack of intellectuals. It is not lack of people who are well versed with what they are supposed to do. The problem that we are facing in our economy, it is lack of committed servants. The problem we have in our nation is not lack of resources. The problem that we face in our nation is that we have people who exploit the available resources, who do not manage the available resources because within them there is no spirit of servanthood. So this book I wrote as an encouragement, as a challenge to each and everyone, that your greatness, the greatness of this nation, will not be realized through political settlement. It will not be realized through political alignment. The greatness of our nation will be realized when each and everyone takes his position as a servant. In that office you are, whether serving the public, when we take that position as a servant, that is when we will make a great nation.
Wow, I don't know what I can say, but what I can say that you are a blessed man.
Amen.
You are so blessed. I can't imagine that a class will drop out. You can speak all that English. Oh my. You are so blessed, and I'm so happy to be here. My viewers, everybody deserve to buy this book and read it. It has a lot of powerful information that we need to hear. Tell us, where can I get this book and how much?
Okay. Currently the book is selling at 1,500. You can call my number, and I will make arrangement to have the book delivered.
How many chapters in this book?
200 chapters. We have 8 chapters.
8 chapters.
Yes.
So you will give us your number, because my viewers, kitabu unafaa kusoma wewe mwenyewe. As for me, I will get it.
Thank you.
I will make sure nimeisoma yote. Kulingana na vile umeongea, that means the information in this book, it's very, very powerful, and it's information that is going to change your life, because kama vile umetuambia, sisi wote tunafanya, we are servers.
Yes.
We are servers. So buy this book, read it. 1,500 is not that much. I know people from Reverend Rehab TV show, they can afford to buy this book because they are blessed. You know, give us your number, wapatie namba yako ndo wakupigie simu, na wakitaka kitabu will arrange waambie vile uta-arrange, vile utawafikia.
Thank you very much. You can reach me on 0727 647 683 on my Facebook page, General Mathenge, GN Mathenge.
Thank you so much for coming. For me, I have learned a lot. One thing that I have learned is that I should never give up. Na nisijidharau, kwa sababu nikijidharau will never make it. And I have to make the right decision. Yeah, so thank you so much for coming.
Welcome.
Even you, my viewers, I know that you have learned a lot from this episode of today. You know, hata sijui niongezee nini, nitotoe nini. What I can say, thank you so much for coming. I'm so humbled. On behalf of Reverend Rehab Mwangi TV and Red Talk Show, I'm so humbled. Na Mungu akubariki sana sana.
Amen.
So guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Today's segment was so powerful. Tumesoma mengi sana sana. Make sure before you leave this channel, you subscribe and also turn on the notification bell so that you can be notified each and every time we upload a new video. The host of today's episode is Henry Karanja, and thank you so much for being here with us. May God bless you till next time. Bye bye.